Hey guys, this is Cube and I will show you how to micro Protoss units in the most efficient way. This guide will be helpful for beginners but also for advanced players. I will go over each Protoss unit and show you how to get the most out of them. The most basic Protoss unit you have got in your arsenal is the Protoss zealot. So you might be thinking, what am I supposed to do with a melee tank like the zealot is? So 0 range and no abilities besides the passive ability, which is the charge. So if we simply click on attack against those 4 circlings, so without any micro, the zealot will be able to kill 2 circlings and harm 1, but 2 circlings remain. Regarding micro, the first thing you want to think about is, can I kite the enemy units? Kiting is very easy and simple if you have more range than the enemy units. But in this case the zealot has 0 range and the circlings also have 0 range. But there is another thing you can abuse in terms of kiting. When your attack speed is slower than the enemy units, you can still kite even though both units have the same range. So this time we will have the same scenario, just with the difference that we will try to kite the enemy circlings. So as you can see, still 2 circlings remained, but we got a lot more damage done. Last time one circling was full HP and the other one got 1 hit. If you want to get the most out of your micro, target firing is also really important. So you can target fire and kite at the same time. And as you can see, it's possible to win against the 4 circlings just with a little bit of micro. Next up we will have the Stalker. This is the unit which offers pretty much the most micro potential from all Protoss units, thanks to its blink ability. But even without blink, we can do a lot of micro with the Stalker. The high range and movement speed of the Stalker makes it very cost efficient in most scenarios if microed correctly. So if you just let it attack the Marines without microing, the Marines won't have any trouble just gunning it down with only 1 Marine dying. But only with some simple kiting and focus firing we can kill all the Marines without losing the Stalker. Or not. But I'm sure you got the point, and this works even easier if we have higher numbers, because focus firing becomes less important then. Obviously microing back the weakened units will also help you a lot winning those fights. So in this scenario our Stalkers have the blink ability. It's not only used to blink over terrain like a cliff for example, but it's also very important if you want to micro your Stalkers efficiently. So in this case the enemy units have a lower range, the range of 4, while we have 6 and we have blink. So if we test it out, those roaches would simply win in a straight up fight if we would just let them fight against each other. But if we only use some very simple blink micro, we can save the weakened Stalkers by just blinking them in the back. So even if you are not that quick, you can still watch the low Stalkers and just blink them in the back, and if you're doing it correctly, you might not even lose a Stalker. Next up we will have the Sentry. It's the basic Protoss spellcaster and you have 3 abilities here. The first one is the Force Field, which is the main micro ability you have with the Sentry. Second one is the Guardian Shield, which only gives you 2 bonus shields for all the units in the range of the Guardian shield. And the third one is hallucination, where you can hallucinate any kind of units, which can be useful in a fight if you just hallucinate, for example, some zealots and send them in the front while your other army is in the back. Now this can be effective, but if the opponent has detection, this will be rendered useless because the enemy units won't attack the hallucinations. So the most efficient way to micro with sentries are with force fields. So there are two types of force fields. The first one is trying to split the enemy army in half, which I will show you here. So the point is that the units in the back won't be able to attack. The second type of force fields are defensive force fields used against melee units. So the whole point is that the enemy units won't be able to reach our units, and our units can kill them from a distance. The next unit we will go over is the Adept. There's not much micro you can do with the Adept besides the typical kiting and hit and run, but the shade ability provides us with a lot of potential to kill the enemy at places where he's not defended. So if you assume the Zerg's minerals are in this corner and the army is up front, it's very basic. We will just shade the Adept to his army. Maybe he will chase us, and if we want to, we can still cancel the shade. So just imagine killing a Zerg's mineral lines with Adepts. Next up we will have the High Templar, which abilities are pretty much self-explanatory. We have the feedback ability, which drains the unit of its energy and does according damage to it. So if the Infestor has 200 energy, it would lose 200 hit points. But it only has 90, so it's gone. And the more important ability of the High Templar is definitely the Psionic Storm. That's why you always want to have High Templars in your late game army composition, because it does huge splash damage. If we take a look at the Dark Templar, we will see that there's not that much micro possible because it's a melee range unit which is invisible and doesn't have that many HP. So usually we want to abuse the Dark Templar if the opponent doesn't have detection. So in a straight up fight, the Dark Templar won't stand much of a chance. But if we really want to micro the Dark Templar, there are still some things we can do with the DT Blink ability. So the only reason why the DTs won this time is because we could close the gap where the range units have an advantage. So even if we try to kite, we can blink behind of his army or on top of it to kill it right away. Next up is the War Prism. To understand the War Prism, we need to understand the basic principles of kiting. The main reason we want to kite is because our units have either a higher range or, which is important in this case, that our attack speed is slower than the enemy's units. So we want to negate the slower attack speed. So in this fight, our Archons would lose the engagement because they get surrounded by the Zerglings. Thanks to the War Prism, we can prevent our Archons from getting surrounded, while also negating the higher attack speed of the Zergling. The possibilities of the War Prism are endless. because it basically provides all our Protoss ground units with blink. We simply need to pick up the weakened units in time and can save them from certain death. Just need to make sure we will drop them in a bag again, otherwise the micro is useless. We can also use our warp prism to dodge enemy attacks. Right before the enemy Stalker would hit our Stalker, we will try to pick it up so the enemy attack won't land on the Stalker. The incredible speed of the warp prism, combined with the long range of a Colossus, provides us with limitless micro potential. Imagine a standard map where the map wouldn't write, and on these corners the Zerg would have to make the decision if he wants to chase the warp prism, which won't be possible because it's way quicker, or if he wants to retreat, and then you can just follow him with your warp prism. A much more standard harassment option that you would also see in pro games is a warp prism with a disruptor. You can basically find out where the enemy army is, get near it with the warp prism, unload the disruptor, target the shot, and pick it right up and fly away. In some scenarios, when you go high templars, the Terran will try to counter them with ghosts, which have the EMP ability, which drains the high templars of their energy. We can also use the warp prism in this scenario, because the high templars become untargetable if they are in the warp prism, and we basically want to unload them in the fight and cast a storm before he can cast an EMP. Next up we have the Phoenix. While the Phoenix would lose against this bunch of mutas in a straight up fight, we can micro the Phoenix thanks to its moving shot ability. It basically fires while it flies. So when we are fighting a bunch of mutas like this, we want to keep moving and abuse that the mutas can't shoot while moving. In a Phoenix vs Phoenix fight, which you might encounter in a PvP, it is very important to stack up your Phoenixes. This will make them all attack on the same time, while the enemy Phoenix might not do that if your opponent doesn't stack them. When we are looking at the Void Ray, we will find out that there's not much we can do in terms of micro due to its very high attack speed. So this makes kiting very hard or even useless. What we can do with the Void Ray though is focusing the high priority targets in a fight. When we would just A-move our army, the Void Ray would automatically attack only the Marines because they pose the highest threat to the Void Ray, because they can shoot air. So the Void Ray would only do 6 damage against those Marines. But we want to get the full damage output out of our prismatic alignment ability, and we can do that by simply focusing the Liberators first. Now let's take a look at the Tempest. Due to its incredibly high range against air, we can kite a lot with it. But the problem is we can't kite for long because its movement speed is slower than most units. So instead of kiting with the Tempest, we want to use it as a poking unit. So every time the opponent tries to chase our Tempest, he should get punished for it. Let's imagine a late game Protoss army backed up by high templars. You will have the range advantage, so you want to lure the opponent in the range of your high templars. A real player would go back right when the storm hits, so he wouldn't eat up all the storm, but then you can basically play the same game again and try to poke him. The Oracle is a Sky spellcaster unit which has 3 abilities. The first one is called Revelation. You just put it on the enemies, and now let's imagine there's fog of war, we would still be able to see those units. This is also a good way to detect invisible units, so if casted on an invisible TT, you will be able to kill it. Second ability is the Stasis Trap. You put it down, you can put it down out of the fight, and if enemy units get in range, they will get stasis and can't move or do anything or get attacked for this duration. The main ability for the Oracle and why it is so hated is its pulsar beam ability. Usually the Oracle won't have attack damage, but with the ability it will get a lot of attack damage and even more to light units, so 22 versus light. So you can micro your Oracles by focus firing workers, for example if the Zerg player would have queens and spores in place. You can dive in and out with the Oracles while focus firing individual probes, and you can also shift click on the drones to kill them and then get out. So thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something. Tell me what you think in the comments and if there's anything else you want to learn about. See ya!